The end of the Chequers summit, she thought she'd avoided ministerial departures. But overnight, she has lost the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, and this afternoon, the Foreign Secretary, who toasted her future success over dinner on Friday.
The Prime Minister!
Yeah. Boris Johnson told Mrs May he was resigning just as she was about to make a statement to the Commons. Number 10 unusually announced his resignation for him before he'd even written his formal letter.
Turning to Brexit, Mr Speaker, I want to pay tribute to my right honourable friends, the members for Halton, Price and Howden and Uxbridge and South Ruislip for their work over the last 2 years. We do not agree about the best way of delivering our shared commitment to honour the result of the referendum.
As she spoke, Boris Johnson was still in the Foreign Secretary's official London residence, but his belongings were being shipped out. His team had briefed he was not going to quit, but David Davis's resignation left him exposed. He'd paraded his criticism of Theresa May's approach more than anyone, and staying in was becoming untenable. Across London, Foreign Ministers Boris Johnson had invited to London for a summit on the Balkans, sat waiting for their host to turn up. The man who started this morning's extraordinary political walkout looked serene on Sunday visiting Silverstone, but had already decided he could not support Theresa May's policy. As he said in his resignation letter, David Davis thought it would see the UK being sucked into all the EU institutions with more and more concessions. David Davis's Deputy Minister, Steve Baker, also resigned. Some backbenchers think this is the moment to bring down Theresa May.
I've got no confidence at all and could never support the Chequers proposals. And bear in mind, they're only proposals, so they'll be further watered down by negotiations with the EU to an even less palatable solution. I have no confidence in that, and if the Prime Minister persists in supporting that position, then I'm afraid I have no confidence in the Prime Minister, and I'll have to express that.
Are you plotting, Mr Rees-Mogg?
Plot? I wouldn't know how to plot.
You're plotting with your fellow Brexiters.
I was just saying hello to Mr Bridgen as I'm coming in to be interviewed by the BBC.
It's quite the day of chaos for the government, isn't it?
Saying good morning to a friend is not plotting. Well, it's a very serious moment. It's a very important moment, and it reveals what some of us suspected, that what was agreed at Chequers is not Brexit.
They've probably got enough, the Brexiteers who want to bring her down. They've got enough people to get that vote of no confidence, haven't they?
Well, I don't know whether they've got the 48. That's one quite big challenge, actually.
But they might have that, mightn't they?
Might not, but they've then got to get 151 to support them in the vote of no confidence. I think that's a much bigger task.
Some backbenchers said activists would not tolerate her policy devised at Chequers.
Within 48 hours of the Prime Minister's statement on Friday, I received over 300 emails, disheartened, dismayed, and telling me that democracy is dead. Can the Prime Minister tell the House how does she plan to restore public faith to my constituents that this is not a sellout?
This week, the activists were so disappointed about what had happened at Chequers.
What did you tell them?
They were betrayed. They said they were betrayed, and they asked why. They asked why do we go out each and every Saturday?
This is not a betrayal. We will end free movement. We will end the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. We will stop sending vast sums of money to the European Union every year. We will come out of the common agricultural policy. We will come out of the common fisheries policy. I believe, though, that is what people voted for when they voted to leave, and we will deliver in faith with the British people.
Some stony faces behind her. It's not clear the new Brexit Secretary, Dominic Raab, sees Brexit policy any differently from David Davis. Michael Gove, a Brexiteer staying in the cabinet, gave encouragement.
The Chequers compromise took 2 years to reach and just 2 days to unravel. Mr. Speaker, how can anyone have faith in the Prime Minister getting a good deal with 27 European Union governments when she can't even broker a deal within her own cabinet?
And I commend this statement to the House.
At the end of the statement, there was one brief glimpse of the strain of this most extraordinary day.
And Gary is with me now, and armed with the resignation letter of Boris Johnson. Is he dead meat or on his way to Downing Street?
I don't think he thinks he's dead meat, and a lot of effort has gone into this. It's a mixture between a column and a sort of personal manifesto in a way. He talks about white flags fluttering over the British negotiating position. He says he gets the sense that further concessions on immigration, even beyond what he thinks he caught at Chequers, might be on the way, and that we might end up effectively paying for access to the single market in the future. The trouble is, he says, I've tried these words, defending the policy over and over again over the weekend, and I find that they stick in my throat. Well, it could be that what he was working out over the weekend, and maybe particularly after David Davis's resignation, was that he was looking awfully exposed. You can't really carry on in government if you don't have friends on either side of the party, of this very divided party at the moment, and he was in danger of alienating Brexiteers, those remaining who had stuck with him, I think.
Well, now, the very prominent backbench Tory committee, the 1922 committee, has been in session, just broken up. They never leak, but you know.
Well, they leak pretty well. I don't think it gives us many clues. 23 of the 25 contributions made in the room were incredibly supportive of the Prime Minister. Those who were trying to fire the odd shot at her that were critical didn't really fire with enormous accuracy. I think if you were in the room, you might just scratch your head and wonder if you were in a parallel universe. But those who are most unhappy with the direction of Brexit policy are now having to work out what their tactics are. It seems that they are not keen, some of them, the leaders, I think you're going to talk to one of them soon, in going down the route of a vote of no confidence. I think some of them have done the maths. They're not entirely sure that even if they had enough numbers to trigger that, and they may well, they couldn't be confident that they had enough numbers in the way that Parliament works, the Tory parliamentary party works. When there's a threat like this, they couldn't be sure that they had the numbers to topple Theresa May. And so it looks like they are embarked upon a policy of attrition, wearing away at her government, at her policy, trying to get it to change tack, probably hoping that the EU does some of the work for them in throwing it back at them. And that is where they seem to be intent at the moment. That could include more ministerial resignations if they can prompt and steel their colleagues to do them.
Gary Gibbon. Well, amid the shouting of stop Brexit, or is it long live Brexit, I can't tell which, I might just tell them if they could be quiet for a minute. Guys, could you shut up for just 3 minutes? 3 minutes, I've got someone to speak to. Hold up, guys, hold up, hold up, hold up. I'll be back with you in 3 minutes. Joining us now is prominent Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg, who chairs the European Research Group. Jacob Rees-Mogg, have you signed a letter demanding the Prime Minister, demanding a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister?
No, I have not.
So does she face a challenge?
I don't think so. I think Gary's analysis, as so often, was very accurate and very well thought through. My concern is about the policy rather than about the individual.
Well, let's just deal with the individual first, and then I'll come to the policy.
Yes.
Because the individual's under siege.
Well, the individual did a massive U-turn on Friday with a complete change in policy that doesn't, to my mind, represent Brexit means Brexit, or the Lancaster House speech, or indeed our commitments in the Conservative Party manifesto. So I think she needs to do another U-turn to get back to where she started, and I think that will command a good deal of support.
But you know the Prime Minister, and you extol her virtues. U-turns are not one of them.
Well, she's just done one, so you can do another.
Oh no, steady. That's not really very fair, is it?
Well, I think the status quo ante was something that people were beginning to accept, and this is a sudden change of tack that would have us under the acquis communautaire for goods and for agri-goods, would leave the European Court of the judge of those because they are European rules, not British rules. And although that wouldn't have direct effect, there's very little difference. If we didn't apply them, we would find that we could be subject to a penalty. And there's not a huge difference in that and the current situation.
This is a rather subdued Rees-Mogg, to be absolutely honest.
I'm almost as jolly as your friends over there, who did a good job of trying to silence.
I think
I'm very
you're
impressed.
in trouble. I think the fact is the genie is out of the bottle. She has declared her colours. She is not going to go back on it. You can't come out with a white paper which actually embraces all these things you've mentioned just now and then say, sorry, I was wrong. And indeed all those people in Chequers were wrong who supported it, including Boris Johnson, including David Davis. They didn't resign at that moment.
They didn't resign at that moment.
No,
but
they didn't.
The storming out a la Michael Heseltine is not necessarily a wise thing to do. But what happened at Chequers, see very clearly from the newspaper reports, is that people who backed Remain 2 years ago favoured a very light Brexit where we remain committed to many EU rules, and those who backed Leave took a different view. But can I just finish? Because the Prime Minister does face a dilemma, I accept that. She will either have to do a U-turn, go back to Lancaster House, back to her previous commitments, or she'll have to get the legislation and the meaningful vote through on Labour votes. That is her choice.
You are foursquare with the Prime Minister tonight.
I support her as Prime Minister, but I do not support her policy as emerged from Chequers.
You can't have one without the other, can you?
Well, I think you can. You can support many aspects of policy.
She's messed up as far as you're concerned.
Well, I think Friday was a mistake, and I think it went away from her own red lines. I mean, I think the red lines becoming a white flag, as per Boris's letter, is a very good line.
Would you support Boris Johnson for Prime Minister if the worst happens?
Well, I supported Boris Johnson for Prime Minister in 2016. I've always thought Boris would be a brilliant Prime Minister.
He's not proved himself as Foreign Secretary, though, has he? He's been a pretty bad Foreign Secretary.
What evidence you've got for that?
Well, the Iranian mess-up over Nazaruddin, for example, which was
but
appalling.
he ensured that there were sanctions on Russia from almost all our allies. That was a triumph for the Foreign Secretary.
Iran,
you did, and I'm giving you one of his triumphs. You've picked on one misstatement, but
do you think
everybody...
when you open your papers tomorrow you will find the word triumph anywhere near the Boris Johnson name?
It depends who's written the newspapers, as you know. This is like the cricketer given out, and the fellow says it'll say you're out in the paper tomorrow, and he says no, it won't, I'm the editor. We all know that it's up to newspapers what headlines they decide to put on.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, thank you.
Guys, if you could wait, we've got an interview with a woman, so please be respectful.
And a Remainer.
So, here I am with Nicky Morgan. You are a Remainer, so we better clarify that. What do you make of today's events?
Well, obviously any Prime Minister is sorry to lose two key Secretaries of State. I think, though, the fact that she asserted collective responsibility so definitively, and that's what she did again in the party meeting this evening, was important because actually the country wants to see a united cabinet position now. This is very important. If we're going to go and negotiate this with the EU, there's got to be a united position. And so I think it was always clear. I think I said on Friday other day that people couldn't stick to it. They had to leave.
I love your terminology, but united position is hardly the position tonight. We've got two of the most prominent ministers sort of on their resignation deathbeds. You've got the government sort of staggering all over the place. Mrs May under siege. Lots of MPs talking about her having to go. That's hardly a pretty place to be.
No, you see, this is one of the mistakes I think the opposition made in the House of Commons today. Actually, with Boris Johnson and David Davis gone, actually the cabinet is in a united place, and this is something that's always needed to happen. And of course, we just interviewed Jacob. I know that there are party colleagues who are unhappy about the position that has been taken. But as we've just seen in the party meeting, the vast majority of Conservative MPs absolutely wanted that united position, and then they were reminded there about the dangers of disunity, what that does to electorates. And the important thing is to get on with it now. And I think, no, unity needs to remain now. The point is, actually, we're all kind of past that now. The point is actually about delivering a Brexit deal that's in the national interest. That's what the PM chose to do on Friday. But you heard Jacob Rees-Mogg saying there were no circumstances in which he or any of his band of followers would accept that white paper, that it is, as far as he's concerned, it's dead. Well, I mean, I understand Jacob has, strong views on this, as do many of my colleagues. But to be honest with you, that white paper has not been published yet. There was some good explanations in the meeting, and there have been in the briefings. One of our leading barrister members of Parliament was very clear about the fact that actually it had been misunderstood, the role of the ECJ going forward, and that does need to be explained, everything else. I don't think colleagues should be saying we won't vote for this or won't vote for that. This has got to be about what's in the national interest.
But you're a Remainer. You didn't vote Remain in order to find yourself in a European Union where we might have some benefits, but we would have absolutely no power whatever over any of the issues in which we were engaged.
Well, as I was just saying to you, I think the terms Remainer and Leaver are kind of done now. We're 2 years out from that. The point is now to get a deal by which we do have a close relationship with the EU for business and jobs. That's the important thing.
But a powerless one in which we have no say, nobody in the European Parliament.
No, but that's not...
No way of actually influencing policy which affects those businesses that you refer to.
We will always have a way of influencing policy. Many of those businesses, for example, want to be part of some of the European agencies. Therefore, they will have a voice. We will always be able to explain our position to the European Parliament. But, there's always got to be compromises and trade-offs in terms of getting to the right Brexit. Look, I wish we weren't here. 2 years ago, I was very clear about the benefits remaining, but my side didn't win. I think the British public now want us to get on with a deal in the national interest.
If she rings you up in the succeeding few weeks and says, Nicky Morgan, will you come back? I
think that's highly unlikely. I love my job as a Treasury Select Committee chair. Look, it's a huge honour to be a Cabinet Minister. I've done it before. You're there to serve the country, but I think it's very unlikely that I'm on the call sheet.
Nicky Morgan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Cathy.
Thanks, John. Well, we're still waiting to hear from Boris Johnson himself. He's still tucked up inside his residence. If anything emanates from there, we'll obviously bring you that as soon as we get it. But in the Commons earlier, Jeremy Corbyn said that people are losing faith that this government is capable of delivering a good Brexit deal. So let's hear a little bit more from Labour now and the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry. You've said that Theresa May can't deliver Brexit, but be honest, you can't either, can you?
Well, I think we can. I think that what we've said from day one is that we have to accept the result of the referendum and we have to have a deal that will look after people's jobs.
So what's your deal that's any better than the Chequers deal?
So what we wanted to do is that we wanted to have a period of an interim period where the status quo pertains, and we make sure that we have a good deal negotiated over that longer period. But as for the divorce itself, what we needed to have was we need to remain in a customs union. We need to negotiate so that we can be as close as we can be to the single market, but we need to have some control over immigration. And we would have spent the last 2 years actually negotiating that instead of fighting amongst ourselves.
You've had 2 years as well. You're split too. Why not sign up to the Chequers deal and then improve it, a cross-party solution?
Well, first of all, the Chequers deal is a load of rubbish. It doesn't make any sense.
It's a soft Brexit, which is what you want.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make sense and it won't work. So what it is it's a little bit of customs union, but it's not a lot. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of time wasting. It's going to be very expensive. Why don't we just be in a customs union? Why don't we just do that?
Any softer than the Chequers deal is a betrayal, surely, of what people voted for.
No, what it is the Tory party are negotiating amongst themselves, trying to get something that they can agree on, and they cannot agree.
Labour's not in agreement either.
We've spent 2 years watching the soap opera of the Tory party, and you get Boris Johnson, resigning today. Why did he resign? Did he resign over principle? I don't think so. If he had, he would have resigned on Friday. But he leaves it until
also
today.
A soap opera. I mean, you're riven from top to bottom, just as the Tories are.
No, if you ask. We have people on the fringes. We certainly have some who voted with the Tories, but on the whole, the vast majority of Labour MPs and the shadow cabinet is united on customs union, interim period, remaining close to the single market, some changes on immigration, accept the results of the referendum. That is what we can unite around. Please don't compare that to the chaos in the Tory party at the moment.
Can you also unite around something that the Foreign Secretary, ex-Foreign Secretary said, which is that the Brexit dream is dying?
The Brexit dream is that we have to leave the European Union, and we have to deliver on that, but we have to deliver on jobs. And at the moment, we are running out of time, and the Tories have got episode 75 of their soap opera now unravelling in front of us. And what they're not doing is they're not looking at what is good for Britain. They are only looking at what is good for their independent jobs, not for the jobs of people in Britain.
So you write the script then. You want a general election, followed by a new Brexit deal, which leads then inexorably to a second referendum, doesn't it?
What we have to have, I think, is we have to have some leadership around what I have said, that we have to be in a customs union, we have to negotiate to be close to the single market, and we have to have some changes on immigration.
And once you've got that deal, you put it to the people again.
I think that if once we get that deal, we'll see what the people make of it, but I think it is going to be the sort of thing that people will accept is a pragmatic and the only way forward. And the problem for the Tories is that they have...
people. You've always been a fan of a second referendum.
No. What I'm saying is that is the only deal that would work in the interests of Britain, and that is what we ought to be negotiating, and we are 100 miles away from that. They will not negotiate that because they can't agree anything amongst themselves. They can't negotiate with the European Union if they can't agree what it is that they want to even achieve. It's so fundamental.
You're going to be facing someone else across the dispatch box. We don't know who as yet.
No.
What is Boris Johnson's legacy, do you think?
I think that Boris Johnson was one of the worst foreign secretaries we ever had. I think that he spent all his time looking towards being the Prime Minister instead. I kept saying to him, concentrate on the day job. Don't spend all your time about your next job. You have to concentrate on now. I think that Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe is one of the direct victims of that.
The Iranian woman.
Yes, because he didn't understand his brief, because he hadn't read it properly, he simply reasserted the Iranian allegations, and she is in an Iranian jail as a result of that.
Very briefly, if there is a leadership contest and a general election follows, are you really ready for it? I mean, you're behind in the polls.
You bet we're ready for it. You bet we're ready for it. And I think that that's what we need, is we need the grown-ups to arrive and to negotiate this properly.
Emily Thornberry, thank you very much for joining me. John.